Hi, this is Darren Freeman, and you're listening to the Fulham Focus podcast.
Fulham.
Hello, welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name is Matt Boisclair, and you join us at a crucial time of the season as we prepare to face our West London rivals Brentford under the cottage lights on Friday night. A rare home win for the Whites against the Bees would keep us well in the hunt for automatic promotion, and we most definitely do not want to think about the alternative. Joining me tonight, firstly, is my friend and yours, it's Jmac. How are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Very good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. All good. Also joining us from behind enemy lines is Brentford fan Jimmy Cairns, who's here to give us some insight on our opposition. Thanks for joining us, Jimmy. Are you good, my friend?
Yeah, and thanks for having us. Really excited to get this one done.
We're going to get into looking forward to the game shortly, but before we do that, I caught up with Danny recently to talk about a man who played for Fulham and went on to become one of the club's most popular and important figures of all time.
Fulham.
Right, I've got Danny with me to talk about one of my favourite ever men to be associated with Fulham for so many reasons. Having just been relegated to the basement division in 1994, Micky Adams followed Ian Brentford from Southampton to Fulham that summer as a player who was to move into a coaching role later on. Let's begin by talking about Micky Adams, the player, though, Danny. Predominantly a left-back. I think he played a more advanced role for us, as Robbie Herrera was our left-back at the time. I looked it up, and Wikipedia says he scored 8 goals in 29 appearances. I felt like he played more games than that, but, you know, can't criticise Wikipedia. He was something of a dead ball specialist, though, and scored several free kicks and penalties. Do you remember anything about him as a player? I know you're a little bit younger than I am.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, good, mate, yeah.
Yeah, I would have been about 8 at the time. I remember the squad really well, and of course, I would say I remember Micky Adams more as a manager. But that's exactly what I was going to say before you said it. Free kicks. I don't know why, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think Micky Adams, the player.
Same.
Was he a player manager for a little while as well?
I looked it up earlier, and that season, I think the only time I can remember him being on the bench as a player manager during the promotion season was against Cardiff at home. But I looked it up, and he was also player manager at Swansea and Brentford as well after he left, but we'll come on to that. But I don't think he ever subbed himself on, no.
Essentially, I don't really remember him as a player, but we're doing him for what he did as a manager. That's why we're here to focus on what he did for us. I mean, incredible. Obviously, you're a bit older than me, so you actually suffered where I didn't. I was obviously too young to understand what the club was going through in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Firstly in Brentford and then Micky Adams, I think they transformed the mentality of the club. You know, what you got to imagine when you're down and out and you're on your last legs, as Fulham were, even though Jimmy Hill and the Muddyman family had saved the club, we didn't have a pot to piss in, did we? So I think that the players at that time took that to their advantage a little bit. They knew that the club weren't going to get rid of them because they couldn't afford to. They couldn't afford to replace them. And I think maybe there was quite a lethargic, dare I say it, not quite professional mentality around the club. It was, you know, just going through the motions. And you had managers like Alan Dixon, Don Mackay, who were very nice people, but maybe too soft to kick them into gear. Ian Brentford comes in. I think it wasn't very popular with the fans, was he?
You know why that is, though? He came from Southampton, and Southampton fans hated him. They had some nasty T-shirts printed up when he was managing Southampton, and he was forced out of Southampton. So his reputation was on the floor, Ian Brentford. Then he came to us, and we were like, "Oh, brilliant! This is just what we need." And of course, results weren't brilliant under Ian Brentford when he was manager, which is why, you know, we talk about that season when we were 91st in the Football League. That was under Ian Brentford.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think coming from Southampton, who were in the Premier League, his standards of how a football club should be run, even if he was failing there, were a lot higher than what Fulham had at the time. And it almost needed that unpopular, I don't give a shit what you think of me kind of person to come in and just completely change the mindset of all the players, all the staff, even the fans. And maybe it hit a season. I mean, we almost made the playoffs, didn't we? We almost made the playoffs in his first season.
In Ian Bradford's first season.
In Ian Bradford's first season.
Yeah.
We almost made the playoffs, didn't we? We finished about 9th.
Yeah.
And then the following seasons when it started to go downhill.
Yes.
And that's when Micky Adams took over. And you could argue that Brentford maybe taken Fulham as far as he could. And then that's when it needed Micky Adams to come in because he had been part of the playing squad. So the players knew him. But he wasn't the kind of manager that would tiptoe around you and put his arm around your shoulder. He would be honest with you and tell you if you were shit. Maybe that's what Fulham needed in order to kickstart the rebuild and the future we've had.
Well, from what you were saying, though, the likes of Don Mackay and Alan Dix being nice people, that wasn't working, was it? So to have somebody who's come in and been a bit of a bastard, maybe, that was, and as supporters, we don't really care and we don't get to see that at the time, what's going on. All we see is what's going on the pitch and the results started to pick up under Micky. I just want to go back just ever so quickly and talk about a match which is synonymous with Micky Adams, the player, and that was Ashford away in the FA Cup. Do you remember anything about it? Because I was there and I still haven't properly dried off all these years later.
Now, go on, carry on, mate.
So it's pissing down with rain in Ashford and the game would have been called off. Obviously, non-league pitch, boggy, muddy pitch, would have been called off had it not been for the fact that Sky were down there. I remember we had behind the goal and just a little bit of the side as well. And I couldn't really see. I'm 6'3", and at the time I couldn't really see because it was just a flat block of concrete we were stood on, and I was right near the back. But we're 2-0 down, and my mum and I just decided to pack it in at 2-0 down and go back to the car. Trudged off back to the car. By the time we got back there, it's 2-2, and Micky Adams has scored 2 late penalties, and that's the game that I always think of. Although, as you said, you think of Micky Adams, a player for Fulham, as scoring free kicks. He's very synonymous with that match. And then we did beat Ashford in the replay. So doesn't mean much anymore, but it's just one of those classic Fulham memories where you think, bloody hell, that was low, being 2-0 down away at Ashford in the rain and somehow getting back in it. And I don't even think they were penalties either, to be honest, but we got away with one that day.
Did he strike you as a leader on the pitch?
At the time, I don't really think I was paying much attention to that. I wasn't really looking for who were leaders. I mean, at that time, I guess I was 13, 14. I was just going to watch some football and watching some crap football, actually, and hoping we were going to get a result. And I always looked to Micky to score for us, really, because we had Mickey Conroy. Nick Cusack was playing up front when he first signed. Obviously, he was converted as a sweeper in the 96-97 season. But he joined us as a centre forward, and not a particularly good one. But Micky, did he strike me as a leader? I don't really remember, to be honest. But he was definitely one of my favourite players. And I remember I was given a project to do in art, and we had to pick a celebrity or a famous person who we wanted to focus on. And for some reason, I decided I was focusing on Micky Adams, who nobody else at my school had ever heard of. And our homework one week was to just go and find a picture of this celebrity. So I waited for him. It was Gillingham away, and I waited after the game for him to just take his picture. And it seems stupid now, but he didn't come out. So we just wandered into the players' lounge, because you could back then. There was no security on the door, and he was stood there having a chat because he used to play for Gillingham, I think, back in the day. So he obviously still had some friends in there. And I told him what I had to do, and I ended up having a picture with him, shaking his hand. And then years later, I went to the Micky Adams book launch thing at Craven Cottage a couple of years ago, and had another picture with him then. So I've now got these two pictures side by side of us both looking significantly older and fatter and probably greyer as well. But yeah, so that was quite cool. But that's another one of my memories of him as a player. But we didn't know then that he was going to go on to be such a legendary club figure as a manager. So let's come on to that then. So In early 1996, we were in real danger of being relegated, as we already mentioned. We were 91st in the Football League. I went to that Torquay away game, and Torquay beat us 2-1, and Torquay were the only team below us in the entire Football League. That was a real dark day, as many supporters will know. Ian Branfoot then moved upstairs to become general manager, and Ian Branfoot was a man who, as we said, wasn't the most popular of managers, but as soon as he moved upstairs, I think people began to appreciate his influence on the club a little bit more. Micky Adams took over as first team manager, and his first job was to steer the club, who had a failing mix of players, to safety. And he did do that as well. Danny, when Micky Adams first took over as manager, what do you really remember?
Yeah, well, I think the writing was always on the wall when he signed for Fulham, that he wasn't coming to Fulham just to be a player. I think that was the intention all along, was to always be under the wing of Brentford. He was never quite one of the lads. I think the other players were always quite wary of him. And I think the players were quite wary that he could eventually become the manager. So when he was eventually given the job, I don't know. I think the players knew he weren't going to be the type of person that was going to take any bullshit. And maybe that's what the players needed. He reminds me of a bit of an old-fashioned kind of manager, and maybe more suited to the lower leagues than the Premier League, where it's a bit more bubble wrapped and let's make him feel $1 million. I don't think he was a very loving manager, and at the end of the day, he got the best out of, dare I say it, quite an average bunch of players.
100%, yeah. I also remember a story about him travelling up from Southampton with some of the other lads as a player. I think you had like Mark Blake and Glenn Cockrell later on as well, when he signed Glenn Cockrell. And as soon as he became manager, it became apparent that he had to cut ties with those players and travel in on his own, because it was beginning to cause a bit of a rift in the squad.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. He was very serious about the role. Yeah. And like you said, he wasn't afraid to lose friends over it. He was very much his own mind. And I think that's why it worked so well with Alan Cook, because speaking to a few of the players from that era, Cook, he was quite a comical fella and, very laid back, good cop, bad cop. And I think it probably needed that balance to take the edge off of just how brutal Micky Adams could be. But I suppose if you're going to be a manager, you have to make those sacrifices. You can't be one of the lads, can you?
Definitely not. I went to that evening with Micky Adams at the Cottage a couple of years ago, where he was promoting his autobiography, which I can heartily recommend. It's excellent. And he spoke about the summer before the promotion season, where he just had to get rid of all the crap out of the squad. And he was saying that, Gary Brazil, free transfer. Well, do you not think we ought to give him a new contract? No, free transfer. Like multiple players, he just went free transfer. Let's get rid. And as a man with no previous managerial experience, I just found that such a bold move and a bit of a gamble, but one that ultimately paid off. And as you say, it kind of just backs up what you're saying about him, being quite ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, and it comes back to I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but the same thing with Ian Bradford. They both come from a high standard, playing at the top level, and he could obviously see that there was fundamental issues with some of these players. I'm not going to name names. I'm not necessarily saying that Gary Brazil fits that agenda, but just to say, no, get rid of him, get him out, let's start again. I think sometimes you need to have a clear out in order to have a proper transition and rebuild. You can't rebuild on top of, soft ground, can you?
I only use Gary Brazil as an example because he was the first one that came to mind, and also he did have a few goals in him at that lower level, and it was a gamble to get rid of somebody like that, because he was one of our probably better players at the time. Not that was particularly difficult. But these players, he then replaced them with a series of free transfers who were something of unknown quantities. The likes of Richard Carpenter, Danny Cullip, Paul Watson, Darren Freeman, Mark Wilson. It was a risk, but it was one that was to pay off spectacularly.
Yeah, and not having any superstars, I think, worked quite well. Because I don't think Micky Adams, as a manager or as a personality, was the type that would have entertained an Anthony Knockaert, for example. There was no big egos in there. Doing Fulham Focus and doing all these interviews and stuff, I feel very proud to have spoken to most of that team. And they're so easy to get hold of and so happy to talk about their time at Fulham. They're very down-to-earth people. And I think that's why they worked so well as a team. You know, they had a never-say-die attitude. What more can you say? That we were the underdogs. You know, we had nothing to lose. We didn't have a pot to piss in. This is before the Al Fayed era. So, you know, no one could have envisaged that happening at the time.
This is why this is my favourite season, though, because there were no expectations.
That's what makes it so remarkable.
Yeah,
that's what makes it so remarkable and so legendary is that we were going nowhere for so long, and even with this team, I don't think many people saw a bright future. We were just plodding along, and it literally come out of nowhere. Yeah, it was such a nice reward for all those fans that had suffered for so long. And it was like a release of all that pressure and all that worry. Just for one season, just went away. And obviously climaxed with the winning goal at Carlisle, where it was all but confirmed that we were going to do it. Yeah. And just, you know, Fulham have always been the kind of club that I think have done things the right way and for the right reasons. And no set of fans deserved that season more than we did at the time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. In order for that to happen, though, not only did we have to get the right signings in, but we had to keep hold of a couple of key people, one of which was Simon Morgan, who Micky Adams convinced to stay, despite there being a firm offer on the table from Gillingham in the summer. Gillingham, of course, who had just celebrated promotion at the end of the previous season on the Craven Cottage pitch. So they came after Morgs, but he decided to stay, and he was an integral part of that team, wasn't he, Simon Morgan?
Funny enough, one of our interviews has come with Simon Morgan, and I asked him that question about Gillingham. How close was you to signing? He reckons there was never an offer on the table.
Yeah, Micky Adams tells it better. Micky Adams tells it very differently. So really? I'd be interested to know the actual truth, but somebody's lying.
Yeah. We'll probably never know. But yeah. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. He stayed, no. and again. That's why Simon Morgan is Mr. Fulham. That's why he's admired so much by the fans, because he was there throughout it all, from the very dark days all the way until, you know, it's like he saw us off into the Premier League and then went off and did his own thing. It was like he completed the full circle with us. And, you know, by staying and not going when he was clearly too good for the level we signed him at, because he dropped down a division to sign for us from Leicester. Yeah. Yeah. He was clearly too good for the bottom division. You know, I think that just epitomises what he was like as a person and the loyalty he showed to Fulham. Equally, it shows how dominant Micky Adams was as a manager. You know, if Micky Adams says you're not going, you're not going. End of. Don't matter what fees on the table. He was a very decisive manager. He was also very lovable. Very loved by the fans, and we didn't see that side of him. This is only from what I've learned from speaking to other players. We saw a manager that was very suited to Fulham, and he came across as a gentleman to me.
You don't always have to like your manager that you play for, as long as there's respect, and as long as he can, as long as people can see that he's doing things for the right reasons and trying to get the best out of his players, regardless of. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as the saying goes. You know, some managers find success by doing things one way, whereas another manager will, you know, do them slightly differently, but still get results. And you know, it definitely happened for Micky.
I was struggling to find the right way to put it, but you just hit the nail on the head. Respect. Now, I'm not sure all the players liked Micky Adams as a manager, but I think everybody at Fulham Football Club respects him for what he did. Yeah. And without him, God knows where we'd be.
Yeah, things would be very, very different, because we wouldn't have got up that season. Who knows then if the Al Fayed offer would have come in the summer. Sorry, the Al Fayed takeover. And then I think everything would have been so different had that season not happened when it did.
Well, it's arguably the most important season in our history.
Yeah, but we didn't know it at the time. But knowing what we know now, of course it is.
Well, I was only 8, to be fair. So
Yeah.
I'd like to think at 31, I'm a little bit wiser, a little bit.
I was 15, so it's brilliant, an absolute perfect age. No responsibilities or anything in my life. I could just completely focus on Fulham, and at that time in my life, it was just perfect. Also key to the turnaround in the club's fortunes was the former Micky Conroy that season. Somehow he went from being an average striker in the bottom division to somebody who just everything he touched flew into the back of the net. Headers, left foot, right foot. It was such a turnaround because I remember him being a bit of a donkey for us the previous couple of years.
Yeah, and Terry Angus recalled a moment when, before that season started, I think it was the pre-season, where Micky Conroy refused to do a run or something along those lines, claimed he was injured.
Yeah.
And Micky Adams was not happy, proper slated him. I think he made him walk for miles from where they were back to the training ground and sort of really humiliated him.
Yeah.
And Terry said, Micky Conroy was not that kind of guy to respond to that. He was quite a sheepish character, very quiet, and he thought the writing was on the wall. That was it. He's finished. Yeah. And then just out of nowhere, he gets a goal, at the beginning of the season, and it's just something sparks. And like you said, he scored 23 goals in that promotion season.
Yeah,
23 league goals. Phenomenal. So, and that's one of my clear memories of that season is Robbie Herrera left back and Micky Conroy up front. They're the first two players I think of when I think of, and Darren Freeman on the wing.
Definitely Darren.
They're the first three things I think of when I think of Micky Adams' team.
Yeah.
Micky Adams just got the best out of an average bunch of players. I think that was Micky Conroy's level. But to get 23 goals out of him is phenomenal.
Fantastic. So what was your standout memory from that promotion season then?
Well, when you're 8 years old, you don't really appreciate at the time individual matches, I don't think you go into a game thinking, oh, blimey, we're 5 points off the top, it's a must-win today, or, we're three more wins, we're promoted. Each game as it comes, and it's just such a wonderful experience to be with your granddad and your mum, and it's a great day out. And I think my standout memory of, although I remember the whole team, I could name you them all for fun. Really clear. That's my first clear memories of Fulham is Micky Adams' team. But my standout memory is meeting Micky and the players at the end of that season when they had the family fun day at the cottage. Took a penalty against Mark Walton and missed.
Did he save it or did you miss?
He saved it, but he didn't have to move. Let's say it. Yeah,
at least you got it on target.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. And when we went into the Riverside stands, I remember going into a bar. Can't remember what one, but I remember going into a bar and meeting Micky Adams, and he was talking to my granddad, and he patted me on the head and just smiled at me, and it's just looking up at him, thinking, like he was like the Messiah, like it's, what I mean, just looking up at your heroes, and my dad's a Man United fan, so at the time he was still trying to convince me to be a Man United supporter, so I was going to Fulham from a young age, with my dad still trying to, Man United this, Man United that. And Man United at the time were, best club in the world probably. But there was just something about Fulham, and it was that season that it just hit me. This is me. And, I'll never forget meeting him. Never forget it. I can remember it as clear as day.
So meeting Micky Adams that season was your standout moment from that season, right?
I just think the whole day celebrating promotion, all the players, all the fans on the pitch, everyone together, and Fulham very quickly changed in my life. After that season, Al Fire takes over, we end up shooting up the leagues, and the whole club changed. Everything changed. I remember a guy called Arthur, old boy that used to be on the cottage gate, and he used to let us through the cottage gate, because he knew my granddad, and it was just the fans manned the gate. Things changed so quickly, and I'm just so grateful to Micky Adams and to my family for introducing me to Fulham so young and getting to experience that, getting to meet all the players, and just it was a proper football club back then.
It was so different. I think talking about memories from that season, I didn't go to Carlisle, regrettably. I wasn't at Mansfield when we were promoted. I was at Leyton Orient, and I think that's one of the standout memories of the season. Not only did we win 2-0 on a Sunday lunchtime at Brisbane Road, but Terry Angus was stood up in the crowd, conducting the fans with "Stand up if you're going up," and he was the first one up on his feet with his hands above his head, which was absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant.
It was also absolutely smashed Darlington 6-0 at home, where everything that we hit that day seemed to fly into the back of the net. And it was normally us at that level that was on the end of those sorts of scorelines. So that was a special one. Also, Cardiff away as well. I remember we scored in the first minute away at Cardiff. I think Conroy scored, and then Blake scored Mark Blake scored a penalty. And we were singing about having Freddie Mercury in our goal at Tony Lang that day. It was just brilliant memories. It was just also. Yeah, it was also different back then, but just brilliant. I loved it.
Swansea at home was quite a big one.
Yeah, because we just come off the back of a really bad run of results, hadn't we? And we turned it round. I think we were losing that game as well, and Paul Brooker scored a last-minute goal.
Yeah, something like that. But I think we won 2-1.
We did.
It was top three to go up, and they were fourth, weren't they? And we were on quite a slippery slope at the time, so
yeah. Exactly.
It was a vital win. That sort of changed it again. That gave us that breathing space.
Yeah, it did. And we went on from there and kicked on. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, having been promoted, that summer, of course, Mohamed Al Fayed bought the club. Micky Adams signed players like Aidan Newhouse, quickly nicknamed Aidan Shithouse amongst supporters, Andre Renzi, Paul Moody, and just a handful of games into that season, he was ruthlessly sacked and replaced by Ray Wilkins underneath Kevin Keegan. How did you feel when he was sacked?
I'm pretty sure he signed Neil Smith as well.
Yes, you're right, he did.
Yeah.
He did. That was that summer, yeah.
Yeah. How did I feel when he was sacked? Well, again, at the time, I was too young to really understand it all, It was 1 minute he was here, 1 minute he wasn't. And I suppose had we been a Premier League club at the time, the coverage would have been massive and a bigger deal would have been made of it. It was only really amongst the fans that, the older fans like yourself and generations above that at the time recognised what Micky had done for us and how unfair it was. And no two ways about it. No matter what way you look at it, it's really unfair. But Micky, Al Fayed was a man who knew what he wanted and wanted to get there quickly. And as much as you love Micky Adams, I do say that he was more suited to the lower leagues than he would have been to the top divisions. I know he got there with Leicester, but he didn't last at the top for very long. And it needed, I think, big names like Kevin Keegan and Ray Wilkins to come in and attract the likes of Chris Coleman and Kit Simons, Peter Beardsley, Philip Albert. I mean, those kind of players would have never come to Fulham. Rufus Brevitt, they would have never come to Fulham in that level, the third tier, if it wasn't for Kevin Keegan.
No,
let's face it. So, as harsh as it was, you can't say it was the wrong decision because look at what happened. I think it proved to be the right decision.
It was the right decision, but it was a tough one to take at the time because the first bit of success that we've had, and the man who bought it to us was just booted out straight away. But yeah, I agree. It was the right decision with hindsight, but at the time it didn't feel like it. Well, he went to Swansea very briefly after his sacking. Didn't last long there at all, and he was Brentford manager very soon afterwards. And he came up against us when we drew 1-1 at the Cottage. And I remember him walking out of the Cottage as Brentford manager and him just get everybody ignoring Ray Wilkins, who was our manager, and just going mad for Micky Adams, singing one Micky Adams and him clapping and waving back. We drew 1 all that day, and then we played them at Griffin Park later in the season as well, and we beat them 2-0. I think you're unlikely to ever see Fulham fans give a Brentford manager such a great reception again, aren't you?
Oh, well, 100%. This wasn't a Brentford manager, was it? This was a Fulham legend.
Oh.
Let's get it right. It was quite a unique situation. You want to see signs of a good manager. How many of those players that were quickly not good enough for us because of the direction we were going turned to Micky Adams as their next manager? We had 3 or 4 that followed him to Brentford, even though he wasn't there for long.
Think of Paul Watson, Glenn Cockrell. Did Danny Cullip go there?
Did Darren Freeman go there?
Yeah, he might have done. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then a load of them ended up at Brighton with him as well, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Took the words out of my mouth. Brighton, and they had a good spell at Brighton, didn't they?
Yeah, another promotion.
Well, yeah, they did well there. There was a lot. I mean, we've got a lot of players in common with Brighton over the years, and a lot of it's down to that. There's about 7 or 8 of them that ended up there. Yeah. So I mean, that just shows you don't follow a manager around if you don't respect them and don't want to play for them, do you?
No, of course not. I always feel it seems very fitting as well that the last league game at Craven Cottage, as a predominantly standing stadium in the Premier League in 2002, some years later, was against Leicester, who were managed by Micky Adams at that point.
Yeah, 0-0, wasn't it?
It was 0-0. Crap game, but it's still great to have him back there for that.
Yeah.
And he's been back again since as well. I think he was Port Vale manager a few years ago when we played them. I remember he told a story as well. This isn't really my sort of story to tell, but I'll share it anyway. That when he was managing Port Vale, he turned up and he thought that we were going to be putting out our reserve team that night. It was obviously we were a Premier League team. So he wrote up on his whiteboard in the changing rooms the team that he thought we put out, and then he picked his team to go up against it. And then when the team sheets went in, we put our first team out. And he said he just walked back into the dressing room and said, "Good fucking luck," and walked out again. And I think we beat them 6-0 that night. And we hammered them as well.
Was that when Kamara scored a hat-trick? Was it Kamara?
Oh, I don't know. God knows. I don't remember. You'll remember that better than I do.
What was the score?
6-0.
Yeah, Kamara did score a hat-trick in someone. We beat him 6-0.
I think
6-1 or 6-0. It might have been Peterborough, actually.
Jumansi Camera.
Yeah.
Abu.
No, blimey. A bit before Abu's time.
Abu's hat-tricks are all to come.
Yeah.
Nice one. All right, mate. Well, let's bring this to a close then. Rate Micky Adams' Fulham career out of 10.
10.
Yeah, same. Couldn't be a higher 10 either. Probably my favourite of all time. Fulham figure, not necessarily as a player, but as a manager and just as a Fulham person, couldn't be a higher 10. Absolute Fulham legend for me. Yeah,
well, Fulham legend, and I mean, it just exceeded everything, didn't he? A penny, and he turned it into £1 million. He turned it into a pot of gold, and how can he not be a 10? It was a miracle. Yeah, it was. And who's to say as well that had he, we know he was sacked and Kevin Keegan and Ray Wilkins were brought in, but who's to say that Micky Adams wouldn't have got that team out of Division 2 eventually, because he did it with Brighton. So who's to say he wouldn't have done it with us as well eventually? Maybe not quite as quickly, but... I just think it was just the situation just didn't suit him. He would have needed more time to build an upgraded version of what he'd already had, which was a band of brothers that, with no egos. And obviously... Al Fayed, didn't have time on his side, did he? He wasn't prepared to wait that long, and it did need Keegan to come in and get those big names in. But I don't think that's anything against Micky Adams. I just think it was just horses for courses. Micky Adams is a great manager, and we'll never forget him, will we? And here we are. What 25 years on, 24 years on. Yeah, still celebrating it. So it'll never be forgotten, will it? It won't. Best season ever for me, 100%. Lovely stuff. All right, mate. Thank you for that. Let's pass it back to the main show then.
Fulham.
All right, well, let's look ahead to Friday night then, chaps. So, firstly, Jimmy, I hear your granddad used to play for Fulham. Is that true?
Yeah, just found out a few bits about him. He played during the 1930s, signed at 16, got into the England under-21s, although I'm not sure if he played for the team. But then, obviously, World War II started. He went to the RAF with a couple of other Fulham boys. And when he came back, football wasn't really deemed as a big job at the time, so he quit. So, yeah, but no, got a bit of history behind Fulham. My dad was actually a Fulham fan. I'm quite surprised I'm a Brentford fan, actually. Would have thought they might have introduced me to Fulham when I was a kid.
Yeah, that would have been better. What was your granddad's name?
Frederick Tomlins. I remember seeing a cutout of a newspaper article when Fulham beat them, Oxford City 6-0 at the time around the mid-30s.
We don't get many 6-0s these days, that's for sure. More 1-0s, if anything.
I think we do all right.
You do. You've been flying through it this season, haven't you? You've had a 7-0 against Luton and 5-0 against Sheffield Wednesday recently. We'd love some of that, to be honest. What made you become a Brentford fan?
My dad took me to a game in 1995 against Hull City, 1-1-0. It was my first ever live football game. Then 2 days before my birthday in November of the same year, took me to Shrewsbury Town. And I was a mascot for Brentford then, and that was it. Straight on the bandwagon for better or worse.
I've got to say really quickly that I've known Jimmy for a very long time, and his love for Brentford is quite apparent through a very life or death situation. We went skydiving together in about 10 years ago in Sydney, Australia. And he was the first one to jump out. And I swear to God, before the first, maybe the last, but the first words he said before jumping out the plane were, for Brentford, and then he just flew out the plane. That's when I knew.
It was my last words, and I've still got the video evidence of that.
Madness, absolute madness.
Fair play. What would you say then, mate, is your favourite season following Brentford?
Personally, for me, I think it's the 1999 season when we won Division 3, purely because, if I remember correctly, that was the first time I ever had a season ticket for Brentford, so it always kind of sticks for me.
Is that Ron Notes?
That
Ron
was Ron Notes back at the time. Yeah,
I remember him.
Ron Notes before he tried to screw us.
Yeah, he did, yeah. And what about the current side? Who's your favourite player at the moment? Or who's your best player at Brentford? I guess we're not kids anymore. Who's your favourite player? But who's your best player at the moment?
You know what? I actually think it's Rico Henry. Because he's a left-back, just does not get enough love for what he does. But he's played every single game for us so far this season, and he just excels. And considering for the first couple of seasons, he was so injury-prone, to get through that and just deliver every single week.
Is Brentford's form this season a surprise to you? Did you expect to be in with a shout of promotion? I know you've been there or thereabouts the last couple of years. And either way, why are you doing so well, aside from the goals of Ollie Watkins, of course?
Surprise-wise, though, I don't think too much. I think this was going to be the season where we could make a difference and really push for it. One of the first things that we got is we've got such a strong recruitment drive. We go to smaller clubs and teams abroad and bring in younger players, probably with the pretense, if they do well in the league, that they can go on elsewhere. Squad-wise, I think we play well as a unit when we get it together. I mean, we went through that slump quite recently. We've only just sort of picked up again with the Sheffield Wednesday game. So I'm not surprised that we're doing well. I would have, in an ideal world, I would hope we'd be pushing a bit more for automatic promotion, but I think that's kind of out the window now, really. So depending on how well we do against you and West Brom, I think it's just really sticking to that playoff place.
I can tell you now, you are the one team we do not want to be facing in the playoffs at any time. So if we're in the playoffs together, we hope you get beat in the semi-finals. Otherwise, if we get through to Wembley again, I think there's a lot of Fulham supporters who are thinking we just want to avoid Brentford at all costs because we've got such a diabolical record against you.
Yeah, but then again, our record in the playoffs is absolutely shoddy. Remember, we're the ones that destroyed the curse of the Millennium Stadium. Up until we played in the playoff final, every team that had the home changing room won.
All Fulham fans really don't want to face Brentford in the Wembley final because we're pretty sure that you guys will impale us. Is it a sort of, what's the vibe like among all the Brentford fans? Are they really reveling in the idea of facing Fulham? Would that be your dream fixture for a playoff final?
Yeah, we would like Fulham. We would like you a lot. I think the sort of planning is hopefully either us or you will come third or fourth, so we'll miss each other in the semi-finals, beat our respective teams and just meet up for a bumper day at Wembley. I'd like to see us play in the finals. I think just for the fixture itself and just how much it would mean to everybody, I think it'd be great.
It would be amazing for the team that wins, but I couldn't cope with it. I could not cope with that scenario at all. I think I'd have to start drinking about 3 days before to get through that one.
Oh, I'll join you on that one.
Every time I go to Fulham, drive up the M4, I drive past Griffin Park and then past your new stadium. How's it coming along? Have you been along to have a look yet?
Yeah, it's a big change for us. It's weird to think that's going to happen now.
Is it now or never for promotion then, considering you've got this new stadium, or is there still a kind of degree of patience around the place?
I think it's a fairy tale ending, obviously, to get promoted and go into the Premier League with 20,000 all season. I think if you try and put too much emphasis on something that doesn't come true, then it kind of ruins everything in the future. So all fans are sort of pushing towards getting the promotion and moving to the new stadium as the Premier League side. But if we didn't, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's just going to be a matter of adjusting regardless. So whether it's in the Championship or the Premier League, just going to have to go through it.
We're going to move back to Fulham then. And Jmac, let's have a chat about the Fulham lineup. We kept the same lineup a couple of games ago, and then there was a slight tweak because Joe Bryan's injured and Kamara came in for knockout at the weekend. Any changes that you can see? Harrison Reed's training again, potentially back in the side, do you think?
I think it would be pretty harsh on Harry Arter for Harrison Reed to come in and take his place. I think Harry Arter's got better and better the past 3 games. Certainly after his terrible performance against Millwall, I think he's channeling his, natural aggression that he has in the right areas now. And I think he actually had a very good game against Bristol. So I wouldn't put Harrison Reed just yet, but definitely as a sub. There's a bit of a horrible rumor that potentially Joe Bryan's out for the full season, which would be really, really bad news for us. But I think largely for this, I would definitely start AK-47 on the right, and Cavallero just had such a dodgy game for me against Bristol. I'm not too sure if it'd be good to keep him or not, but I think AK-47 definitely needs to start. It's this sort of game that he could really impose his physicality upon sort of the players like Brentford. I was thinking at one point, should we maybe start Cabana? But I remember we started Cabana against Brentford at Griffin Park, and it didn't look too great, to be honest. I mean, and I didn't think Cabana did much for us when he came off the bench. So I think maybe Cavallero has to ride out this sort of rusty spell of form he's on, and I would still keep Anthony Knockaert on the bench.
That's the thing with Cavallero, though. He'll have one crap game one week, and then the next it'll look like, he should be in the Brazilian team for, obviously he's not Brazilian, but you know what I mean. He looks outstanding. So, yeah, hopefully he's got a few good games in the run-in to come. Should we have a look at the stats?
Yes, it's my favourite thing. Okay, so Brentford's season so far, they're on course for their highest league finish in some time, actually. The last time they finished higher than the top 4 in the second tier of English football was in 1946, 1947, when they got relegated from the first division. Now, since then, they've been flirting around in the 3rd or 4th tier of English football, but recently back in the Championship, they did manage to finish 5th in 2014, 2015, but lost out to Middlesbrough in the playoffs, as Jimmy was alluding to earlier. They don't do well in the playoffs. And they got off to a sluggish start, only winning 3 of their first 10 games, drawn 3, lost 4.
Obviously, as Fulham fans, I'm sure you remember the sort of old days when we're all slugging it down the bottom. It's been such a whirlwind change to come into the Championship, and we have held our own there. And that first season we came back to Championship and came 5th in the end, that was like a fever dream because we were up in the 2nd place, I think, around Christmas time. Regarding our form at the beginning of the season, to be honest, as a Brentford fan, that's nothing new to us. But I prefer us to start badly and kind of pick up pace. But yeah, at the beginning of the season, I mean, obviously, the first 10 games, you said, it was not too good. And I remember a lot of calls for our manager to get sacked.
You picked up form a bit in the next 10 games. You winning 5 and losing 4 with no draws, including winning 3 on the bounce and also thrashing Luton 7-0. I mean, was it around that time, the 7-0 game, where you thought, okay, this manager's sort of getting through the rough patch now? Did you always have faith in him that he'd be able to carry on what Dean Smith was starting there?
Yeah, definitely. He was around for a long time. He obviously came from Bromby, so he had a bit of pedigree behind him managing top teams, even if it's a Danish top team. I never had a personal problem with him. I think a lot of the naysayers are the sort of people that just don't like it when things aren't going right straight away. But Thomas Frank, he's been nothing but great to us. He seems like a lovely guy. He always takes time out of the fans, and he seems to genuinely care about the club. So when you've got someone like that at the helm, you've got to give him an opportunity. Otherwise, what is the point of having them do it, really?
Yeah, and you know what? He's got a beautiful head of hair as well. He's like, lovely.
Gorgeous, isn't it? I wish I had that hair.
Typical thing for you to say that.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll continue through this jungle of stats. I mean, so yeah, the form continued to improve in the 10 games after that as well. You won 6, drawing 2, and then losing only 2. Includes our 1-0 loss to you guys, the last derby at Griffin Park. However, the 7 games that have followed since have been a dramatic drop in form, winning only 2 and drawing 4. The 5-0 against Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend was your first win in 6 games, actually. So even though that was an incredible result, the results before then haven't actually... I mean...
as scary as it was, you just got to kind of keep the faith a bit. And picking up against Sheffield Wednesday, it was the best result we could have had. And hopefully that's going to give the players a bit of confidence to turn out on Friday.
Yeah, well, just looking at your form this season, 17 wins, 7 of those have come away from home, 11 defeats. 8 of those defeats have come away from home as well. So your away form is a bit patchy. I mean, you've got plenty of away wins, but it doesn't seem to be that consistent with those defeats as well.
We are nowhere near invincible, and we do throw games away with the best of them. It's got to the point now where we just got to concentrate on our games now, win as many. You can't be worried about other teams.
It's the old cliche, but it's just every game's a cup final now, isn't it? It really is running into the last few games of the season. But you don't seem to have a problem with scoring goals. Best goal difference in the league with plus 31. You've scored 64 goals and conceded 33. And the 64 goals that you've scored is the joint highest amount in the division with West Brom. And 33 conceded. It's the second best defensive record behind Leeds as well. So your stats are fantastic, really.
Regarding the defensive record, at one point it was the best in all 4 of the top divisions. Over the last couple of weeks, our defence has kind of lapsed, I think, with Janssen being injured and Jean-Pierre not being able to play some games because of injury as well. It's kind of fallen apart a bit.
You've got 5 clean sheets away from home this season, 11 in total, but you're 11 points better off at this stage this season than you were last year. And you've only won 1 game against the top 6 opposition. Guess who that was? Yeah,
of course.
Stato says, when Brentford are hot, they're hot. Brentford have won 11 of their 17 games by more than 1 goal, which is quite the contrast to us. We tend to win by the odd goal. We've won 12 of our 18 just by 1 goal. So we're effective, but a little bit boring. You've won 4 of your games by 4 or more goals. So 7-0 against Luton, 4-0 against Bristol City, 5-1 against Hull, and then, of course, the 5-0 against Sheffield Wednesday last time. But when you're hot, you're never hot for long enough, which is why you're not in the top 2, I guess. So haven't won more than 3 on the bounce. Your longest unbeaten run was 5 games, but that only consisted of 2 wins with 3 draws. And your current run at the moment is your weakest run since the start of the season, although that 5-0 win against Sheffield Wednesday could well have reignited your season. Let's see. Jimmy, talk us through Brentford's best players this season.
We refer to them as the BMW, and that is Said Benrahma, Brian Mbeumo and Ollie Watkins. They've actually managed to score 46 goals for Brentford, and 64 goals we've actually scored this season. So percentage-wise, that is pretty incredible for what they've managed to do. Ollie Watkins, at the moment, he's our main striker after Maupay left. And so far, he's got 22 goals this season. And he's second top goal scorer after your very own Mitrovic. Ollie Watkins' goal scoring record is 151 minutes per goal. However, Watkins has kind of dropped out of the goal scoring at the moment. His last goal was 3 games ago when we lost to Luton Town 2-1. And moving over to our French wizard on the right wing, Brian Mbeumo. So far, he's got 14 goals and tallied 6 assists. And at this time of talking, he's actually the 7th top goal scorer in the league and second top goal scorer for Brentford. The third person bringing up the rear is the Algerian Messi, as we like to call him, Said Benrahma. He is the top of the assist board for Brentford. Another star player that we really got to is Pontus Jansson. Obviously, he was a complete surprise to come to us. I believe he cost us $6 million and moving across from Leeds, who are obviously a league rival of ours at the moment. I think fans were very excited but kind of nervous about it because it went against the grain of our usual signings, which is young talent, not necessarily proven in that league. Whereas Pontus is well known and well regarded in the Championship for being a leading defender. But yeah, absolute superb signing from us. And of the 25 appearances that he's had this season, he's led us. And every time he's played, our defence has looked rock solid. We're really, really missing him at the moment. And coming up against someone like Mitrovic, we could have really done with him in the squad, but it's not looking like he will be playing.
He's injured. Is he injured? Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's a weird one. He's injured. We're kind of getting
what a bloody show.
It's a pain. But he wins 3.4 aerial duels per game, which I mean is pretty outstanding for a defender. Should he have been playing there, him and Mitra would have been a battle of the gods. I don't know what to say. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's going to be there. He's saying on social media that he is coming back to recovery, but as far as management's concerned, he's not 100%. And until he gets to that 100%, they're not going to risk him for the time being. So it looks like it's going to be up to Jean-Vier and Pinnock to keep your goal-scoring mastermind at bay.
Come on, Mitro! All right, lads, let's have a score prediction then. I'll come to you first, Jimmy. What do you reckon?
You know what? I'm kind of worried that they might have knackered themselves out a tiny bit. I'm going to play sitting on the fence. I'm going to say 1-1. I reckon Mbeumo will grab us and Mitrovic will grab yours as well. 1-1
from you, from the enemy. What about you, Jmac?
My head says 1-1, and I think a lot of us Fulham fans would take a draw at this rate. But at the same time, we also want to get a bit of revenge. But I think in the spirit of being positive, I can see us winning 2-1. But I do think Brentford will certainly score.
Oh, yeah. Brentford will definitely score. They've got such a good record at the Cottage. I can't remember the last time we beat them. In the 80s or early 90s, it was for sure. Obviously, we had a period where we didn't play them very much, but that's neither here nor there. They tend to really up their game when they come. And that last game that we played at the Cottage when Morpay scored in the last minute, and it looked like that was going to cost us promotion. And really, that was a real sucker punch. But without that, we wouldn't have had Wembley. But, you know, that was a tough one to take at the time. Anyway, I can't see it being any better than a draw either. I might go 1-1. I really hope we do somehow put this bloody home voodoo to bed, but I can't see it. I'm going to go 1-1 as well.
Nice.
All right, okay. Jimmy, thanks ever so much for joining us, mate. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you on again soon when we play you in the Cup when we get promoted and you don't.
Wow, okay, yeah, nice way to sign off. No, thanks very much for having us, guys. You got tickets?
Yeah, we're both going, yeah. You coming?
No, I couldn't get a ticket, unfortunately, so I'm watching it with my dad. But, thanks for having us, guys. The rest of the show goes well. Yeah, may the best team win.
Legend. Bye, mate.
Cheers, mate. And J-Mac, cheers to you as well, mate. I'll see you for a few beers before the game on Friday. Looking forward to it.
You too, mate. You too. I'll have the Guinness ready.
Lovely stuff. Everybody else listening at home, we'll be back at some point at the weekend to go back over the game with a fine-tooth comb. In the meantime, have a great week and see you soon. Cheers.